Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy beginning of Atlantic hurricane season and happy beginning of meteorological summer. I have had this channel now for 6 months to the date. We started it back in December. We are now halfway through the first year, and I'm very appreciative of everybody who's a subscriber and who has followed along. We've seen some really good growth, and I'm happy about that. But there's obviously more folks out there that need to be tuning in here as we are getting started with what could be another kind of busy Atlantic hurricane season. So I'm going to share my screen with you all and show you that in the first 180 days here, we've grown it to over 5,000 subscribers, 137 videos, and several shorts and community posts. And I am very appreciative of everybody who's had a chance to tune in here. We are going to focus a lot of this video on the tropics, and now our first invest of the season. This is Invest 91L. Some new information coming and some adjustments coming in the shorter term to what the weekend forecast is going to look like here. There is a better than 50% chance, according to some of the models, that we see some form of a tropical depression forming. However, as we get through the weekend and into next week, some changes coming. The models are now kind of dissipating the storm faster and increasing the amount of wind shear in play. And a lot of that has to do with where the storm is centered and where it's forecast to go, actually all the way down south of the Keys towards Cuba here this weekend. And as it does so, we are in for more wind shear. And so I don't think this is going to be a big ticket item. If you are in South Florida, though, you are likely going to pick up quite a bit of rain. Central Florida, some rain as well. And I think that's going to be our main impact with everything else happening over the Gulf. There is likely to be our first Hurricane Hunter recon mission here later on today. They're expecting to send 2 planes in, one in the afternoon and one towards tonight. And so it's going to have a better feel for what's happening with the storm, if it's actually in fact developing or if the models are overdoing this forecast development. But nonetheless, the first day of Atlantic hurricane season, we've already had one subtropical storm and another storm last weekend, which I think they may go back and see was also subtropical. So we've already had somewhat of a busy start, and with the Gulf of Mexico being warm, we still are likely to deal with potentially a depression, maybe a low-end tropical storm here over the next couple of days. Here's the list of storm names, and we have not touched this yet. And I know up till about a couple of years ago, we typically had at least one named storm form before the month of June. Going back, if things were done the way that they were in the past, we probably would already been in that situation. In fact, this might be a Brett or a Cindy, but nonetheless, just get familiar with the names and start getting prepared, because I do think we are going to have a fairly busy start to the season here as we get later into June and especially into July. Some new names on the list this year: Idalia, that replaces, I believe it was Ida back in 2017. No, Irma. Ida was 2021. Also, Nigel's a new name, and I believe Rena is a new name. So anyway, the El Nino situation continues to grow. This is not a surprise. Not a freak out moment at this point. We need to see more consistency, but notice how the trend over the last month or so has been for warming of the Pacific waters, and over the last 5 to 6 days, significant warming. So we are very likely going to be in an El Nino, which typically means fewer named storms in the Atlantic Basin and more in the Pacific. Now, that does not have anything to do with if you're going to get hit by a storm. It has nothing to do with the number of hurricanes. It just means overall, and especially as this becomes more solidified here later on this summer into the fall, overall, there tend to be fewer storms forming in areas where in the past, in the La Nina year, we've seen a lot more storms, especially the Caribbean and Southern Gulf. But please do not write off this season just because we are heading into an El Nino. I think what we're going to see are bigger impacts coming in the fall and winter from a big flip coming in the weather from what we've seen this past winter. And if those of you that want to see snow in the east didn't see it, this certainly is more favorable for that to happen. But we obviously cannot just put all of our eggs in one basket. There's a lot more that comes into play here. Here is the tropics, and still a yellow lemon. This is a 20% chance of formation over the next few days. We have seen a little bit more concentration in storms, but only a marginal environment for development here. However, in the Gulf of Mexico in June, it doesn't take a lot. But notice the change coming in that there's a lot less likely chance for something to form east of Florida. So these things do change. And despite my forecast from the weekend into early this week, showing that maybe it would develop east of the Florida Peninsula. That is now looking a lot less likely. So I got it wrong, at least I think I did. But again, we're still tracking the system. It still could have impacts on Florida, regardless of whether or not it gets a name or becomes a tropical depression. Here's a look at the Atlantic Basin, and you can see our upper level low, which is triggering these storms, which have become more concentrated here south of Panama City, west of Tampa Bay. We see a strong trough going all the way down into northern Mexico. There's a lot of dry air coming down behind this storm system, and then a lot of moisture gets picked up and gets drawn into the southwest Atlantic. Some fast flow aloft from the southwest. Definitely busy down here between Africa and the Windward Islands. Nothing concentrated. There's still a trough here bringing some wind shear. So it's going to be tough to get anything to form, and that is definitely common for this time of the year. Typically, we don't see Cape Verde systems really get organized till later in July or August. We could see a hotter start this year, though, because of the fact that the waters are warm. We may see lower wind shear down in here, at least for a period of time. And then on the Pacific side, last year we had more activity than we do now, but we do definitely still have a lot of thunderstorm development. But Mexico is hot, it's dry, and as we get into further into time, we could see a strengthening ridge here over the Southern Gulf and Caribbean, and then at that point we have to start keeping more of an eye on tropics. We also have several cyclones here, but nothing tropical, nothing to be concerned with, so do not worry about that. Here is a look at the Gulf of Mexico. This is the water vapor imagery from tropicaltidbits.com. And you can see we're fighting wind shear, but we definitely have an area of storms to keep an eye on. Right now it's over water, which is good. As the day wears on, we'll likely see an enhanced sea breeze over western Florida, as well as the panhandle. That will lead to more storm development as the afternoon wears on. Some of those storms could be on the heavy side. Here is the visible image that's just starting to come in. You can see there's a bit of a surface circulation. Let me draw for you guys here. There's a surface circulation right in here, but all the thunderstorms are displaced off to the north and east of the center, so not a lot of organization. So what the plane is going to do is it's going to examine all quadrants of the storm and determine if there is in fact a closed off circulation near the ocean water. If there is, then we likely could have a tropical depression. It's going to measure the winds aloft here and try to figure out if there's enough wind for this to be classified as a tropical depression or a tropical storm. And that plane is expected to get in there towards the middle of this afternoon to determine that. Now, we very well may see that it is a named storm or a tropical depression. However, the future is not looking as good with this as we get on into the weekend. So that's what I'm going to talk about for you guys here. Oops, I thought I cleared this out. All right, clear all drawings. There we go. You guys can't even see that. Here is the infrared, and you can see again, here's our circulation center off to the south and west of the thunderstorm. So yeah, very concentrated area of storms, but we need to see if it's going to persist or not. It may just be a flare up that we see in a nocturnal phase here at night. If these storms do continue into the day, then obviously that plane trip into the storm is going to be more warranted. If they die off, though, if we see in 12 hours this is not really looking very organized, there's very much a chance that they abort that mission out of Biloxi and we don't see any kind of recon going into it. Here is the reason why that could happen. You see there's wind shear over the southern Gulf, 50 to 60 knots, and that goes south of our system. And north of our system, there's very low wind shear. That's the green area. In between, it's very marginal. We're not in the red, but we're not in the green either. So we have some wind shear, which is going to continue to blow those storms away to the north and east of the surface circulation. But it is going to also mean that we could have enough persistence from this over the warm waters where something certainly could still form. Farther south and east where it's going, we're likely to see higher wind shear over the weekend. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Here's a look at the upper level charts, and you can see the circulation here is actually going to track farther south and west. And the reason for this adjustment is that the upper level trough that's moving southwestward from Canada into the northeast here this weekend is continuing a kind of more of a trend where it's going to be digging in farther south and west. And what that does is it forces our storm system to go on a more southerly track. And it also allows colder air to move in more quickly here into the northeast. So a big flip in the temperature pattern coming. Typically, to see development down here, what you want to see is a high pressure region to the north of the storm system. And that will create less wind shear in a more favorable environment. However, you don't see the ridge centered over in here. That's where you want to see it. Instead, you see this huge trough, and that's actually kicking south and west, and that's going to keep this system going more towards Cuba, and it's going to continue to lead to a much less favorable environment here over the next several days. And if you look at the models, you can see this trough stays in place over the Northeast next week. And instead of heat, we're talking about a chillier air mass in place here right through next weekend. Eventually, we'll see a ridging taking place here over the Southern Gulf and the Northern Atlantic, or the Northern Caribbean here. You can see this ridge takes over this region here, and that, as it builds north and east, is going to lead to more favorable conditions for development. But this is the 12th of June, so we've got to get through basically the first third to half of the month of June before we can even see that take place. So, well, I do think the tropical season is going to get busy in a hurry here with storms closer to the US than what we might typically see for the next couple of months. It's going to take a while to really get that persistent pattern in place for us to really have to worry about anything major. But I mean, as you guys saw last weekend, something major could still happen even with an unnamed storm if you get the right conditions in place. As we get beyond this, we do see more of a progressive pattern, and this will probably mean more severe weather over the north central US. Here's a look at wind shear, and you can see how quickly the winds aloft pick up here. This is Saturday afternoon, very fast wind shear into Florida, and this will continue to create a hostile environment for any kind of tropical development right on until about the 12th or 13th of June. And then we see much lower wind shear off the Atlantic coastline here by the middle of June. So it's going to be tough to get things going. Here's a closer look, and you can see the wind shear is pretty low here today, but tomorrow it starts to pick up here over the north central Gulf, and over the weekend that wind shear increases over the eastern Gulf and across South Florida. So we may have just a short-lived system here over the next few days. All right, I need to move on here. Here's the European surface circulation likely to form in here. This is tomorrow morning. You can see the low pressure actually tracks down towards northwestern Cuba. We may see it survive and move across the Bahamas and offshore, but this is good news for the Carolinas and northern Florida, as it's going to be moving well away from this area early next week. But we're going to see kind of a struggle here. The GFS also shows our low pressure system moving southwest and kind of rounding the base of this trough here. And this is over the weekend, and you can see the pressure comes up as it moves into northern Cuba. And we see lower than average pressures here off the East Coast, but we don't see anything in circulation here at this point. The ICON, the German model, which was very bullish, shows a weak low pressure system. It tries to get into the Florida Straits here over the weekend, and just a general area of lower pressure moving away from Florida. So again, better news here for the Carolinas. Here's the NAM visible satellite. The grid doesn't go any farther than here, but you can see the circulation center through tonight, and it's tracking southwestward. The NAM actually has it going in this direction down in here, almost towards the Yucatan, and you can see it just kills off any storm development here. So this is a quieter look than what we've seen over the last couple of days, and that's what you want to see if you're in Florida. The GFS ensembles show that there is a 60% chance that a tropical depression will form over the next 3 days. Not over Florida, though. It's actually going to be over the north central Gulf of Mexico, and then that chance dwindles as we get through the second half of the weekend, and then that's it. The Canadian also has a 60% chance of a developing tropical depression, but these models keep it below tropical storm intensity. Here's our look at tropical storm, and it's not even, it's between 0 and 10%. So maybe a depression, but that's probably it at this point. Here's a look at where the ensemble forecast takes the mean track of the storm. Some of them take it down towards the Yucatan. Others take it down towards Cuba and then track across South Florida, but none of them has a surface pressure below 1,000 millibars, so a very weak system at this point. And the intensity guidance here on our models shows that for the most part, this will probably at worst be a tropical depression. By the time the system is over here, it's still tracking something well off the coast of Florida, probably towards Bermuda and northeast of the Bahamas, so really nothing to worry about at this point. And here's a look at the HWRF tropical model, and you can see it does close off a center here. Some faster winds aloft here tomorrow morning, in fact, up to 50 knots, which is about 60 miles per hour aloft. But then you can see as we get towards Saturday, that wind shear takes over, and we see weakening of the upper level winds. And by Sunday morning, this is really not even really an entity by the time it's over Cuba. So I'm not super worried about it, but I definitely think you're going to have a lot of rain here in South Florida. You can see in Miami over 2 to 3 inches of rain possible. Parts of West Central Florida will get some beneficial rain as well here through the weekend. And the moist flow continues. Whether or not we've got a developed storm system, we still see a lot of rain over the next 6 to 7 days here in South Florida, perhaps up to 9 inches of rain over the Gulf and up to 6 inches over the Everglades here. So looking now at the rest of the country, we do have the flash flood watch in effect for southeastern parts of Florida. We do have flooding threats as well over New Mexico and northwestern Texas around Amarillo. And unfortunately, this situation looks like it could get worse. Right now, not a big chance for severe weather. We've seen severe weather, but overall, it's going to be confined to Amarillo and especially Lubbock, Texas, and maybe eastern New Mexico for today. Not really a big chance for tornadoes, but we could see a couple of tornadoes here in the Panhandle. Maybe a little bit better chance that we see some hail and some strong wind over this region. Tomorrow on Friday, we do see a better chance of severe weather, and it's farther south, all the way down the Midland, Odessa, into the Permian Basin and the Big Bend of Texas and northeastern Mexico. Improvement across Colorado, though, and we could see storms starting to pop up over the upper Midwest where we could use some rain as well. And over the Northeast. And then this is Saturday, and a large area of potential storms, but not a large area of severe weather at this point on Saturday. Just a little bit too much uncertainty at this point. Here's the NAM looking at the high plains. We are seeing multiple clusters of storms moving through here throughout the afternoon, and then a break, and then more storms firing up. And these could be a little more intense tomorrow. And there will be mountain snow in Colorado as well. So still a pretty strong system aloft here, which will likely lead to some enhanced storm convection here during the afternoon, especially into the evening. This is 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock tomorrow in Texas and Oklahoma. As this moves south and east, it does weaken overnight, and we see quieter weather by Saturday morning. Rainfall totals in Texas look to be pretty significant here on the GFS over the next 15 days. We're looking at amounts that will exceed 5 inches. Some places could see a foot or more of rainfall. So a very wet pattern expected here. And looking more at the Rockies, we are seeing significant rain as well over parts of Idaho, Montana, and Colorado, maybe as much as 5 inches in the Denver area here over the next 15 days. So very wet weather expected in the interior of the West. This is beneficial to areas that have been in a drought, but it could also lead to some flooding here. Looking at the upper level pattern, you can see the reasons why. Multiple storm systems moving into the southwest and then pushing north and east, leading to below average heights here. High pressure stuck over north central Canada. That's going to lead to above average temperatures and drought conditions building over central parts of the northern U.S. and Canada as well. We continue to have troughing, though, across the southeast. Very impressive trough here, which could form a storm system off of New England here early next week. And it looks like it's going to try to back it into Pennsylvania as well. The month of May was a record dry month for much of Pennsylvania. This could lead to some more beneficial precipitation, but it's going to take some time to get that to happen. And just a very unusual pattern here where we really don't cash in on summer temperatures in the southeast anytime soon, while the northeast is going to be quite a bit cooler than it was this week. Here is a look at our temperature anomalies, and that will show you that the heat is still on here across the north central U.S., but look how much cooler we are on the East Coast, and it's going to be cool and wet as well in the southern Rockies and Southwest. And we're stuck in this pattern for the first 10 days of the month of June, and really it looks like we could continue to have a cooler than average setup here as the Great Lakes cool down here over the second week of the month of June. So no extreme heat anytime soon across this region. The European shows how quickly these temperatures head downhill. This is tomorrow afternoon in northern New England, and check out Saturday. We're going to see a 35 to 40 degree drop in a good chunk of New England here in just 24 hours. So as a lot of you are thinking about the beach and the pool, this is definitely not going to get you in the mood for that. So we continue to see that, but the South is going to be a little bit warmer. Wisconsin is going to be a little bit warmer, and we see this trend for cooler weather coming right down the spine of the Appalachians later in the weekend. So a cooler day Sunday in the Carolinas, cooler as well in the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. And next week, we continue that cooling trend down into South Carolina. Rainfall anomaly is going to be pretty darn high here over the next 10 days over the Rockies and Texas. I'm not really going to talk too much more about it, but notice here across Canada how much wetter things are going to get across the Maritimes, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Wonderful news for those of you that are dealing with the wildfires. It's going to quickly turn wetter here in the next few days. Here's a look at the GFS model, and you can see as this upper low moves down the coast, we're first of all going to continue potentially the wet streak here this weekend over the Carolinas. I know you're thinking, oh, great, another weekend in North Carolina with rain. I don't think this is a washout, though, like last weekend. We're just seeing with the front maybe some showers and storms, but we could see a low pressure system forming next week here off of the coast of New England. And this low pressure could bring some significant rain to Maine and Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI. Excuse me, and some rain to Pennsylvania as well, but better chances for New England, it looks like. Going to be pretty dry in the upper Midwest. We do have a couple of fronts that are going to drop south and east. We may have some severe weather to deal with next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend here in the upper Midwest. And here's a look at the NAM model over the next couple of days. Pretty quiet here in the eastern U.S., but you can see tomorrow afternoon we may see a few thunderstorms popping up from Quebec and eastern Ontario down into central New England. And then that will head down into Long Island tomorrow night and fade. And then as we get to Saturday morning, a much cooler, wetter day expected here over coastal New England, as well as New Jersey, Long Island, excuse me, and eastern Pennsylvania. All right, I'm sorry I spent a little more time than I was planning, but it's a busy day. It's a busy pattern that we're in. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. I appreciate that. I thank you for your time today, and I'm a Christian man and want to give God all the glory for everything. And I think it's important that we need to be preparing ourselves for tropical season. Proverbs 27 and 27, I'm trying to find it here. Yes, 27:12. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. The simple pass on and are punished. And from that, I just take that somebody who's wise looks ahead and sees what could happen and starts preparing, versus somebody who says it's never going to happen. Those people are the ones that unfortunately see the wrath of their lack of preparedness. And in Hebrews 11:7, I talked about Hebrews 11 yesterday, faith. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness, which is according to faith. Basically, what that means is Noah set aside worldly desires. He set aside common opinion, public opinion, and said, I'm going to trust you, God. I'm going to move with the fear of the wrath of God and prepare myself for what is to come. And again, my goal is not to scare you guys. My goal is not to say that the Lord is going to put things to death here, but there's prophecies, there's scripture that certainly backs up that claim. And really all you can really do is prepare yourself and trust in the Lord, for he is good for us, and he has given his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for us to be saved eternally. No matter what happens on earth, we have that option. We have that gift that's given to us to accept the Lord and to move out in faith. And I just wanted to share that good news with you today because it means a lot to me every day. When I started this channel 6 months ago, I went out in faith. I didn't know where it was going to lead to me. I knew that I had a gift to certainly share this with folks. I knew that I had a gift to talk about the weather, but I had no idea where it was going to lead me or what sacrifices it was going to take. But I'm excited for the next 6 months. I'm ready for what could be a busy hurricane season, and I want you all to be ready as well. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a blessed day. Feel free to list any prayer requests if you have any. I'm happy to pray for you. And if you could pray for me and my family too, I very much appreciate that. Have a wonderful Thursday, and we'll catch you again soon. Take care.